Welcome. My name is Daniel Diaz. I'm the editor-in-chief of Interbrand IQ, and I'm sitting here with Tom Zara, the global head of Interbrand's corporate citizenship practice and the guest editor for this issue of IQ. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Daniel.
Tom, this issue of IQ focuses completely on the idea of corporate citizenship and asks the question, is corporate citizenship failing or succeeding? What is your view?
The answer is both. On the one hand, it's succeeding because it's becoming part of the CEO vernacular. It is now becoming part of the responsibilities of organizations to address their commitment to corporate citizenship. It is failing, on the other hand, because it hasn't found its way into the strategic orientation or the strategic initiatives of an organization. And it's not infused in the culture, it's neither infused in the product, it's not infused in the behavior and values of an organization. And in that sense, it has failed.
What needs to happen there? What education needs to happen for businesses to see that light and realize that these two things, your business and your corporate citizenship strategies, are one and the same?
Yeah, I think it's the old adage that if you can't measure it, don't do it. If you have no empirical evidence to suggest that doing good actually is a driver of business performance, your overtures for embracing corporate citizenship will fall on deaf ears. The CFO will ignore you, the CMO will ignore you, and in part the CEO, who's responsible to the shareholders, will say, look, if it isn't going to drive the business, why should I invest in it? And one of the things that Interbrand did was to answer the question, does anybody give a damn? And can we actually measure the impact of corporate citizenship on the most important factor in business, which is the propensity of someone to buy your product versus another? And the evidence is clear that it does, in fact, affect behavior. It does, in fact, influence choice. And therefore, it has a albeit small, but we believe growing contribution to the strategy of the business and the performance of the business.
Right. We spoke with Andrew Hoffman, professor from University of Michigan, for this issue of IQ. He frames it as a sort of culture war that's mired in ideology. The camps are so divided, it's really become much like the discussion on abortion or gay marriage. Is this a culture war inside corporations that we're seeing right now?
Absolutely, it is. There is a new tension that exists within corporations. Part of it is the advent of social media and transparency, the fact that you can't hide what you're doing. And you have what are two interesting communities within large organizations. And that is the legacy of leadership, which is the baby boomer generation, who had great promise of making the world a better place. And, you know, in retrospect, that generation has failed. The other end of the tension that is existing within organizations is the adoption of and introduction of millennials into the workforce. Two different but related groups who see purpose and see morality in business from a very different light. And it is, in fact, flaming a culture clash within organizations about what is our purpose. It is that dialogue that is now happening inside and outside organizations that's raising visibility around the commitment to corporate citizenship, the effectiveness of corporate citizenship, and the sustainability of corporate citizenship within organizations.
Right. You know, we were recently down in Zuccotti Park here in New York City interviewing some of the Occupy Wall Street protesters, and they ranged in age from 19 to 69. So millennials to baby boomers, and they're outside that corporate structure. Do you think that movement is pointing to the fact that this inside-out sort of framework is really not working when it comes to corporate citizenship?
The demonstrations that are happening in cities across the world around challenging the moral fiber of corporate America, the behavior on Wall Street that we've documented as part of this edition of IQ is interesting in that it's from 19 to 69. It is players within established and establishment, as well as the fringe, who choose to use the access to media and the access of collective will as a way to voice a deep-rooted sentiment of distrust and disappointment with the way corporations are contributing to society.
You know, last year when we were at Harvard together, you interviewed a great number of companies, IBM and Google, and a lot of them expressed a fear of talking about what they're doing too much, being too public about what they're doing. How do we start to change that culture where they feel that it's their duty and responsibility to actually start talking about the work that they're doing in corporate citizenship?
I think it's very interesting. Many of the responses that we got when we said, why have you kept these stories? Why is this part of your lore hidden in a closet? And they said, well, we're very humble. We don't want to go out and brag about what we've done. That's one very common response. The other was, well, you know, there's things that we haven't done that we should do better, and there's the possibility that we can be discovered for some violation somewhere in our organization that isn't perfect in its execution. And the concern for us has always been that doing nothing is much, much worse than doing something and knowing that you're imperfect.
It would appear that transparency is their best defense against any attack.
Absolutely. And if you embrace it and you welcome it and you allow the warts to be seen whenever they rise to the surface, tells you that you're an organization with good intent, you're an organization that manages its imperfections, and you're an organization that understands that at the end of the day, doing good is far more admirable than avoiding bad.
Right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Tom. We really appreciate your time. Stay tuned to Interbrand IQ for videos from our upcoming Corporate Citizenship Conference at Harvard, and look out for our new issue, which is releasing on December 1st. Thanks very much.